Hi there, my name is Holly Puzzolo and I'm the Head of Growth at the Data Refinery. And today I'm going to be talking to you about how to supercharge your marketing with data. Um, so we'll jump right into it, but essentially there are going to be three main takeaways from today's presentation. So grab a pen and paper or however you like to make notes and we'll jump in. So who am I? So I have worked for 14 years in data by accident. I actually initially turned up to the wrong interview, not by my own fault, but a recruiter sent me to the IT graduate day rather than the marketing graduate day. And then I've ended up working in data and analytics ever since. So as you can see from my second point, that kind of makes sense that I'm not technical in nature. So I don't have a technical bone in my body, but I don't believe that you need to be in order to access insight. What I do believe, however, is that you need to be curious, and more about that later. Over the kind of the span of my 14 years in data and marketing, I've always been about kind of helping marketeers and marketing organizations get to know their data better and utilize it. And really, it's about kind of getting to know the people and your own customers. And that's what makes me passionate and what I really, really enjoy. And today, the presentation is going to walk through some of the basics around this and I guess where to start in this modern day and age where there's a lot of data and a lot of technology available to us, where to begin. So I've got three challenges for you today to try and summarise and help you on your way with kind of starting that journey. So some of you might know this person, Peter Drucker. He's obviously a famous business strategist and marketing kind of guru, who said a very long time ago, the aim of marketing is to know and understand the customer so well that the product or service fits him and sells itself. That is still true and still relevant today. Interestingly, Peter Drucker was one of the first kind of strategic management consultants that also challenged the original or traditional business thinking around having an organization look at and try to improve processes and sort of the technology around a business and the processes. He challenged this and said, actually, for businesses to become successful, they really need to focus on their people, and their people are both their employees and their customers. And that was really revolutionary, way back when he first said this, and it still stands really, really true today. People are what make a business a success. So, as marketeers around our organisations, I did say at the beginning that we don't need to necessarily be, hugely data savvy or literate or kind of technologically advanced, but I do think that we need to be curious. And this is kind of, I guess, the aim as marketeers of our business is we become the detectives. We are there to find out who our customers are, what different segments might exist within those customers, what their purchasing behaviour is like, what they're buying from us, and what else they might buy from us. And really importantly, and often kind of a core KPI of ours, is where to find more of them. And so these are the types of questions we need to start asking ourselves, just for starters. But it's interesting because, as we've often, I imagine a lot of people kind of who are listening to this, you've walked into organisations where the customer base is already established, and therefore there isn't an ability to set and define this for yourself. So you might have some information about this already, but it's always worthwhile kind of re-asking that question and finding out whether that information is still relevant today. Another sort of like interesting, I guess, point around this is when we're thinking about the answers to these questions, the aim of marketeers is obviously to try and create something that's as personalised as possible. But in reality, the people and the answers to these questions are all going to be different. So when we think about, the people that you're perhaps sort of sat near or virtually near in terms of like your colleagues, the route that you've got to the jobs that you've got might be different. You might have different skill sets. You're employed for different reasons. Even the people that we are closest genetically to, parents and siblings and offspring, you're going to have differences between each of you, and they're the things that are the nuance, the things that have shaped you and your values and your experiences over time. So it can be incredibly difficult to actually do this and do this at scale and then implement things to kind of speak to this. So that's what we're going to talk about a little bit more today. And the first place we'll start is kind of how would you use data to help inform some of that? This is a kind of a simple graphic just showing the types of data that typically might sit around an organisation today. So as marketeers, we'll be quite familiar with that top kind of light purple bubble in the marketing data. So we're typically seeing ourselves often in tools like Google Analytics. We might be using the social media channels to drive advertising. And then we've got kind of email marketing platforms as well, which kind of come often into our remit and into our day-to-day. And then you've got kind of the sales and lead type data that might sit in an e-commerce platform or in your CRM system. And obviously that might be different for different types of businesses, whether you're B2C and have consumer products or whether you're a B2B organisation and you track kind of leads and that relationship over time. And then you branch out from that into the light blue bubble. There's a lot of data that often sits around the rest of the organisation, which as marketeers, we don't typically have access to maybe on a day-to-day basis. But we'll talk a little bit about how some of this could be really, really useful in thinking about how you kind of tackle or use data to tackle some of your marketing initiatives. And so some of the examples we've got here are things like finance systems. You might also have ERPs, which is enterprise resource planning systems, which kind of have stock and delivery and more detailed information about the actual logistical process post-sale or purchase. And then super interesting, and this is a world I've sort of come from previously, is all the external data that is available to organisations. And there's a lot out there nowadays, and lots of this due to recent kind of open data legislation has been made available to all of us. So that's things like from the census and the Office of National Statistics. So we'll talk a bit about that as well. But first of all, I just want to talk a little bit about why not one source will ever give you everything that you need and why it's really, really important to think about the source of information that you're using for various things. So a typical example will be the whole kind of path to purchase for a consumer. So it might start out with the marketing team hopefully coming up with a great idea, a really engaging campaign, and reaching out to that target audience or consumer via either an advertising channel or your CRM or email marketing platform. And so you might have some really good information in these systems in terms of who was targeted, when they were targeted, what campaign they saw or content or creative. Conversion information, on the other hand, that happens further down the funnel. And so if we're relying on a source here to provide information on conversions, we could be seeing a slightly misleading version of the truth. So the next kind of, piece in that path to purchase might be where that person then lands or engages with your brand. Is it on your website? Is it on through to a call centre? There'll be different systems capturing that information at that point. And then further down, you've then got the actual sales and transaction data itself. So did that person go through to make an actual purchase? What was the value of that purchase? Has the purchase gone through and been fulfilled, or was there any return done off the back of it? And you can see here that already the power in linking all of these sources will mean that you have a true understanding of the effectiveness of your marketing campaign. You can see exactly who's purchased and that really detailed information on whether it has been successful or not. So most marketing measures already rely on linking data sources. So if we go back to those the blue and purple bubbles, you can think about marketing and sales data. How many? I often ask this question of how many people have or are reporting on one of these metrics already. And the answer is typically almost 99% of marketeers are reporting on one of these metrics. And if they're not, I suspect there is a rather different conversation to be had there. But essentially, you're already linking data. You already must be looking at marketing data and then the sales data to work out one of these metrics. So congratulations, you've already kind of embraced the power of data, and also importantly, the organisation that you're working within has done so too, because they see the value in it. So that's a little bit just to set the scene, I guess, on what data might exist around an organisation, why you should think about kind of linking that data to get the best source for the piece of information that you want. So how might you actually apply this in practice? So the first challenge that I have for you is within those two the bubbles of data that we're already fairly familiar with. And this is to try and understand what segments exist within your base. So this is within the marketing and sales data bubbles. And a really simple and quick to understand example of this would be the RFM model. So some of you might be familiar with this already or have it referred to as RFV, but essentially it stands for the recency of purchase, the frequency of purchase, and then that monetary value of purchase as well. And once we understand a customer on each of these three dimensions, we can apply a combined score. That combined score will then pop them into one of these boxes. So essentially, you've got in that sort of top corner, the champion in the dark blue, you've got the champion customers. These are people that purchased the most recently. So they're engaged with the brand right now. They purchase on a frequent basis, and the value of their purchases is quite high. And so naturally, you might want to think about the way in which you treat these people as slightly differently to some other customers who are perhaps exhibiting poorer behaviours across the business. So that's a really interesting, I guess, quick and fairly easy way to start to think about your customers. The challenge here, I guess, is to think about what things are relevant to your business that drive this type of information. And we'll talk about kind of an example of that. So challenge 2 then is, if we'd taken kind of our initial segments, and so we'd base them on something like recency and frequency, the loyalty, of that purchase, what one piece of information from the rest of your business could make your marketing more strategically relevant? So this is kind of bursting out of the marketing bubble. And so what we're really thinking about here is, how does the impact of marketing and your activities impact the wider business? Our KPIs are often focused on that marketing and sales data within the marketing bubble, but actually we could be driving poorer or strong behaviours through the rest of the business. And so that's where it's really interesting to understand what other piece of data could help us understand that. So a really good example of this is somebody who was in our team, their sister-in-law was purchasing on a very, very regular basis, high basket value from ASOS pretty much every week. So she was purchasing a lot of stuff, really interested in fashion, trying it on, getting home, and then deciding, actually, I perhaps enjoy this process more than I actually require the clothes right now. And so every week she was then returning about 95% of those purchases. Now, if we just looked at that marketing and sales data, we would have had her as a champion customer. She's purchasing recently, frequently, and at a high value. However, she's obviously a headache for our logistics and returns team, who are not happy with the way that she's engaging with the company, and ultimately she's not a profitable customer. So the way we might want to treat her would be slightly different. If we were able to just bring in that one other piece of information, we could understand that behaviour, and then we could take action on it. We could send her rehabilitation messages, we could reduce our marketing spend or avoid targeting her, or even go as far as to doing something like charging for returns. So what we've done here is just kind of given a really key example of how if we'd started with our segments and then we'd understood maybe one piece of information, so a behaviour within that segment, like returns, it could identify a portion of those segments, sort of clearly marked here in yellow, as people that we don't want to target. Or, the behaviour might be a really positive behaviour and we do want to target them. And so we would treat them differently. Other good examples could be customers that you bring on board but require high volumes of customer service. Would you bring them on board with different information from the beginning, or provide them with different support packages to help them actually sort of with their requirements? So that's kind of looking at this from within the organisation. And I should have said there that really the piece of information you're looking for there is something that is strategically relevant. So what does the business care about right now? If you're making notes on this, I'd challenge you to think about, what are the top 3 things that you hear your CEO or your board and senior management talk about right now? What is really important to the business in the next kind of 3 to 6 months? And that's where you should be focusing that effort. So challenge 3 then is what piece of information from outside of your business could improve your marketing efforts. And often this is the one where you can get more creative. It can be more challenging to track down a reliable source for it, but there is a lot out there nowadays that you can use. So this would be a piece of information, typically we know about our customers, their purchasing behaviour with us. We know that piece from the rest of the path to purchase about maybe their logistics or their interaction with us once they become a customer. What we don't necessarily know is things outside of that. So what are their lifestyles, hobbies, interests, demographics? And ultimately, a lot of that information is core to purchasing behaviours. So you may be aware that open data is now publicly available data that can be freely used, reused, and redistributed by anyone. So this is information that comes from the Census, from the Office of National Statistics, from the HM Land Registry, Met Office, government, Ofcom, to name a few. And it gives marketing functions an alternate data set on how they can target customers outside of their interactions with you. And actually, guess what? It's free. So, it definitely should be something that is thought about or at least explored for your organisation. So open data, this is sort of the open data that we've found at the Data Refinery is the most meaningful for the broadest section of sort of the businesses that we work with. And so that's the information we pull into our platform, and we kind of typically classify it in 3 main areas. So one are the community and people. So what are the demographics that exist within that customer base? What genders, life stages, number of people in the household, etc. Property and location information. So where do these people live? What's the type of home that they live within? Obviously the kind of the house price and things like that. How long have they been there? That can start to indicate other things like affluence and affordability. And then we also find the utilities and technology can be quite interesting. This can give us a really strong view on, again, sort of like the affordability that people have, the uptake of certain technological products, and also sometimes a little bit to do with the way in which we might want to target them as well. Now, if you consider that using some of the biggest advertising giants in the digital world, so a Facebook and a Google, I think it's, when I was speaking to them a while ago, something like over 95% of their campaigns start with essentially life stage, age and gender. And so they're the core attributes that before you define any target audience, often we're kind of narrowing to that point. Now, many of us might be doing this already, but wouldn't it be great to understand what that actually looked like on our customer base? And if we applied those attributes to our customer base, what kind of things are they purchasing, or what segments they fall within? So we'll give you sort of an example to kind of bring this to life. So we've got the champion segments. If we go back to the segments within our group, these are all our loyal best people, and we're trying to engage them more, and we're trying to do more with them. But what we could do is understand that there's actually 3 different groups within that segment that we might want to do some targeting to. And how we would actually then tailor that message could help us get a much greater uptake if we looked at that. So what does it look like in practice? So if we take a typical data row in a customer database, you might have the first and last name, some address information, and the RFM segment. And now you might also have that product and transaction history, but for the purposes of this, we'll kind of keep that simple. But beyond those pieces of information, we don't actually know whether there's any differences across this group. Well, guess what? When we apply the ONS and Land Registry and EPC and connectivity data, we can see some quite big differences. And this is all real life data. So the people have been made up, but the postcodes are real life locations, real life houses, and the data associated to them. So we can see that whilst this segment of people are all purchasing in the same way from us, there's actually massive differences across the types of I guess, people from a demographic perspective they are. A core one that jumps out to me there is the average house price. So one of these segments is living in a home that's over £1.5 million versus kind of a £95,000 home and a £150,000 home. So quite a lot of difference across those segments there. And what does this look like then in practice? You can start to build up a picture of these people and think about what you might do. So again, real locations, these are taken from Rightmove. So this is our first segment of the champions, and these people are typically over age 65. Therefore, they're retired and their incomes might be low. That's not to say that they aren't asset rich, though. That's something to watch out for. But they're living in sort of urban semi-detached housing. They might be singles or couples. Their connectivity is quite poor, though. So if we're going to be reaching out via digital means or email, that might not be as effective as perhaps a physical mail message that you might want to consider in this segment. The second sort of champion segment in this group, and again, real location, quite like this house myself, I believe it's somewhere near Harrogate. And these are likely to be households of families and couples with very high incomes. This is the house that was over 1.5 million in terms of house value. The connectivity is excellent. You can also start to make some other assumptions about this lifestyle and life stage. So these people are typically going to be time poor, particularly if they've got families, they're working full time still. So actually the marketing message might need to reach them with a little bit more impact or in a timely manner. And so a digital or video message might be more appropriate for this audience. And finally, you've got kind of segment 3 there, which again look quite similar to segment 1, but they're potentially still working. So they're not retired yet. They're still a sort of a medium income household. And there might be some families still at home. So again, that kind of email messaging might be more appropriate for this group who might be time poor. So what? So a real life example for you. So one of the organisations that I've worked with previously was a charity, and they'd looked across their base and found a promising group of customers. So these are people that were sort of exhibiting purchasing behaviours a little bit similar to some of their champions, but they didn't really know kind of like how to push them into that group. So this was a charity, and essentially what they were looking at doing was increasing the uptake in their annual gift appeal. And most charities will have one particular appeal in the year that is the most crucial in terms of generating income and donations. So what they did was they looked at this promising group, they profiled them using the demographic information, and then they split that group into three different segments. So one segment was a fairly affluent segment, one was a sort of middling segment, and one was a slightly lower affluent segment. And the messaging they then sent to them for this large campaign, which was also a very costly campaign to send, so it's all physical mail, a lot of it being done through, and sort of nice glossy packs and all the rest of it. They then decided to change the giving ask in each of those three segments. So the lower income segment were just asked to give what they could. In the middling segment, the message was around could they potentially give to give an example, I think maybe the donation was say £5 or £10. And then in terms of scale, the affluent segment was then asked to give maybe double that because they knew that they could afford to. And this reaped them, hundreds of millions of pounds in terms of return, because they were asking and giving that kind of, I guess, the information based on what they already knew about that segment. So this is a really good example how that was like one piece of data, one campaign, and huge impact for that organisation. And so it's about kind of thinking about what piece of information for your organisation might provide you with a similar level in terms of uplift. So I have rambled through here a little bit about data and the data that sits around the organisation. So I thought I'd kind of come back and summarise that for you. So essentially, the first thing I think in the easiest or the lowest hanging fruit is to really look at the data you've already got at your fingertips and think about what segments exist within it. So what are the kind of key drivers of purchase or difference in your customer base based on the information that you already have? Will that allow you to target people more effectively at scale in terms of that personalisation piece? Then, if you're thinking about kind of leveling up from that, what is the one piece of information from the rest of your business that can improve your marketing efforts to be more strategically relevant? So what is going on in your business right now? What do people care about, particularly in the business environment we're working in at the moment, where companies, the consumers are challenged and the cost of living, is impacting everybody? What's that one piece of information that could help mean that you're driving more profitable and more meaningful marketing results? And then finally, what one piece of information outside of your business could help improve your marketing efforts? So if you could know one more thing about your customers, what would it be? What would you want to know? And then go and have a look, see whether it's available. Now, these are 3 challenges to kind of get you started on where to think about how to use data in your marketing journey. The next step, of course, is once you've kind of got that information ready and to hand, is to start to think about how you might actually bring it to life. And that's where, linking information from these systems, having that information available in a timely manner for the campaign, and being able to, importantly, report on that back into the business as well, becomes relevant. So that's where the Data Refinery can really help organisations. So we're all about how you kind of knit together the data ecosystem across your business. So if you've got, a really kind of good idea in one of your challenges that you'd like to discuss with us, then please do feel free to reach out. But I hope you've enjoyed the presentation today and I hope you've got something from it. Thanks.